There's always been this classic debate whether it's skill or size that wins fights, because fighting isn't just physical, it is literally mental chess with violence. Big muscles might get you through round one and it might help you outstrength people in round one, but if you don't know how to manage distance, energy and timing, skill just completely eats you alive. At the same time, skill can only take you so far when someone is twice your size and knows how to use it. So let's talk about where that line truly is. How much of a difference does size versus skill actually mean when it comes into a fight? We're going to break down all of the history of MMA when we've seen previous matchups similar to this, and we're also just going to talk about modern MMA where the difference might sometimes come down to size when the skill is matched. But we're going to go in detail on all of those things, and if you're a fighter yourself, you'll know exactly what to do by the end of this video. So let's get into the video anyways, boys. Skill versus size in MMA then, boys. Classic debate. He's bigger, so he should win. Why do we think this is true? And it's just based off when we were younger, right? If the bigger guy was the bully and he started a fight on the smaller guy, the bigger guy should win. And that was back in the day when people didn't know martial arts. Nowadays, you walk down the street, there's probably some dork with boss eyes and he's got glasses, and he probably is a black belt in jiu-jitsu nowadays. So you might think that the smaller guy loses. However, people are way more trained now. There's so much knowledge online. There's so much videos and content going around about martial arts techniques, and you can literally learn how to fight from home. And that's exactly what I do on my program, by the way. So first link in the description is a whole library full of different techniques that you can try in your sparring. If you don't actually train yourself, this is where you can start. If you don't want to go to the gym, you can literally use my program and learn MMA through my program with a video just by having a partner. So that's the first link in the description. And we have seen smaller fighters beat bigger fighters many times. This fella down here, Royce Gracie, if anybody that doesn't know, Royce Gracie won the first ever UFC event, and he was the only person that was lighter than 200 pounds in the whole tournament, really. And he wasn't just lighter than 200 pounds. He was going into the cage at 170 to 190 pounds. And you can see here, these are the type of caliber of people that he was fighting, and he won the whole tournament just with one martial art, which was jiu-jitsu. So the skill of just jiu-jitsu won Royce Gracie the tournament. So that just sort of shows you already that skill massively helps beat bigger opponents. However, later on in the video, we're going to talk a little bit about why that isn't always the case. Why weight classes exist then, boys. And it's mainly because of fairness and safety. It balances power, endurance, and reach. If this wasn't the case, fights would be one-sided, right? And this is another reason why the pound-for-pound list is a complete bullshit thing, because how can you compare? Because the classic debate about 5-10 years ago was, would John Jones win against Demetrius Johnson? They were both the same weight, but it's so unfair to say that, because you've got Demetrius Johnson, who's 5'3", and you've got John Jones, who's 6'4", with a 7-foot reach advantage. So they've got two completely different styles, and also the fact that the people in the lighter weight classes, they have more athleticism, they're just better skilled. The lower weight class you are, the more skilled the fighters are. And the higher the weight class they are, the less they have to rely on skill and technique, and the more they can just rely on their power, right? What I mean by this is, say if you're example, you're 6'4", and you're like John Jones, by example, you're 6'4", you've got 7-foot reach advantage for most people, right? Not a 7-foot reach advantage, but you've got a 7-foot reach, and you're 6'4". You're bigger than the average person. The average person isn't 6'4", the average person does not have a 7-foot reach advantage. So John Jones, is it fair to say, can get away with more shit compared to Demetrius Johnson when he's sparring his training partners. So when he's sparring his training partners on the lead up to a fight, do you think that John Jones has to use more skill in order to get the same result? Or do you think Demetrius Johnson, who's 5'3", smaller than everyone, has to use skill more to get the same result, right? You understand what I'm talking about. John Jones can just plod forward, do whatever the fuck he wants in order to get a good result in fighting, just because he's got all of the big attributes and he's a big guy. And when he's sparring his training partners, are all of his training partners the same weight as him? Probably not, just because he's a heavyweight, right? Of course, he trains at Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he trains with Jackson Winklejohn MMA, and they've got so many different sparring partners there. But my point is, is that there's not a lot of people that he can spar that are the same weight as him and just as skilled as he is, right? He'd have to literally fight another heavyweight, an actual fight in the heavyweight division, to be kind of matched in skill. However, Demetrius, he's smaller than most people. He's got a size disadvantage over most people. He has to spar bigger people all the time, so he has to use more skill in order to get the same result against bigger sparring partners, right? If he was fighting somebody his size, he has to use just as much skill as well. However, John Jones, the only time he really has to use true skill when he's sparring people is when he's got somebody that's equal skill to him and he's about the same sort of weight as him. I bet you if you looked at his training camp, a lot of his training partners aren't as big as him, aren't as athletic as him. So Demetrius has to fight people that are always bigger than him and probably more strong and more athletic, as in strength-wise, right? So Demetrius has to use a lot more skill and technique in order to get the same result as John Jones. Hopefully that makes sense. So to answer the question again, I would say that Demetrius would win in a fight against John Jones if they both weighed the same. And that's literally because the lighter the weight classes you are, the more skill you need. The more skill they have in the lighter weight classes. The higher the weight class you go, the less skilled they are. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to show you the difference in caliber of opponents between the bantamweight division in the UFC and the heavyweight division and the light heavyweight division, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Alright then, so it's actually been a long time since I last looked at the rankings, but as you can see, all of the athletic bastards in the UFC division for the heavyweights are all in the top 5, right? We've got Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, Volkov, Sergey Pavlovich, and we've got Curtis Blades and Gelson Almeida. All of these people are really athletic heavyweights. These are freak athletes in the heavyweight division. However, we go down below the top 6 and we've got Sergey Spivak, we've got Derek Lewis, we've got Markin Tabora, and we've got Shamil the Blob Goziev in 11, and then we've got Taito Ivasa in ranking number 12. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you the light heavyweight division so you understand just how shit these guys are. We've got Jan Blachowicz, who is a world-class fighter, in the top 5. We've got all of the athletic bastards in the top 5 as well. We've got Carlos Ulberg in the top 3 now. But then we've got people like Dominic Reyes, who's on a massive fight skid right now. We've got Johnny Walker, number 12 in the rankings. And a lot of these people, I can't even pronounce them. However, if we go to the featherweight division now, we've got Champion Volkanovski, we've got Movsar Evloev, we've got Diego Lopez, we've got Yair Rodriguez, we've got Leon Murphy, we've got Aljamain Sterling, we've got Arnold Allen. We've got some absolute killers in the lower weight classes. So let's just do a little brief comparison between the number 11 ranked in the bantamweight division, a former Bellator champion, and then we've got the heavyweight number 11. We've got Shamil the Blob Goziev. Understand that the heavyweight division doesn't even compete with the skill level of the bantamweight division. So now let's go to the bantamweight division and let me just show you the difference. We've got Marab, we've got Umar Nurmagomedov, we've got Sean O'Malley, we've got Peter Yan, we've got Corey Sanhagen, we've got Song Yudong, who's in the top 5, and he's absolutely amazing. And we've got Figueiredo, a former flyweight champion, in the top 6. My point is that we know all of these people. The people in the heavyweight division and the light heavyweight division, you couldn't name any of them. And that's because they're not as skilled fighters. They're all just kind of blobs. The heavier the weights you go, the less skilled they are. So hopefully that makes you understand the difference between the skill level between the higher weight classes and the lower weight classes. In the bantamweight division, I know exactly who all of these fighters are, but I'm a massive fan of MMA. I love MMA. I watch it all the time. But if we look at the light heavyweight division, only a few of them I actually know. Like, I don't even know who this Azamat Mozarakanov is, to be honest. But in the bantamweight and the featherweight division, they've got such a stacked division. It's such a skill-packed division. And that's because the lower the weight class you are, the more skill you need. The higher the weight class you are, the less you need skill, the more you can rely on power. For God's sake, we've got Derek Lewis. I think he's number 8 in the rankings. I love Derek Lewis, but Derek Lewis is not as skilled as Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is way more of a skilled fighter compared to Derek Lewis. I love Derek Lewis to bits, but we can all agree that Derek Lewis is just a right hand, right? He's basically just got a right hand. And then I'll even show you the featherweight division. Number 8, we've got Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega's had about 2-3 different title fights now. So can we both agree that the skill division, the skill gap in the featherweight division, the bantamweight division, is a lot more competitive compared to the heavyweight division, right? Most heavyweight fights, as much as they are unpredictable based on power, I can sort of tell who should win and who shouldn't win. But when I'm watching the bantamweight and the featherweight division, it's usually a fucking tough one to pick, and that's because the skill is just so high in the lighter weight classes. So hopefully you know what I'm talking about there now. The science of size then. So more mass equals more striking power. More mass equals stronger grip strength and control as well. That also means that they have better stability. So when they get hit, they can take punches better. And when you've got all of these advantages all at the same time, these advantages add up very fast. As we know, if John Jones wasn't ever born, Daniel Cormier would probably be one of the greatest fighters ever. He probably would be the greatest fighter ever. He's won the heavyweight belt. He won the light heavyweight belt. He defended them both a few times. He would probably be the GOAT of the whole of MMA if John Jones wasn't born. And the difference is, John Jones is 6'4" with a 7-foot reach advantage. Well, 7-foot reach. I keep on doing that. And then we've got Daniel Cormier, who's the same height as Conor McGregor, and he's got the same reach as Conor McGregor. And he's a light heavyweight and a heavyweight. So you guys can see how when skill is matched, because we can both argue that maybe Daniel Cormier should actually be more skilled just because he's a smaller person. He's having to fight bigger people his whole career. He might even have more skill than John Jones, which is a very difficult argument to argue, really. But John Jones just has all of the reach advantage. He has all of the athletic ability. He's a bigger person, making it so hard for Daniel Cormier to close the distance on him, right? If you watch their fights, Daniel Cormier literally has to explode into exchanges. However, John Jones can basically touch Daniel whenever he wants, which forces Daniel to have to keep on pressing forward, keep on having to eat shots in order to return the shots back or get a grappling exchange or whatever. So can we agree that when it comes down to skill being kind of matched with each other, that size does come into the play when that happens? What skill really means in fighting then? We've got timing and distance, we've got efficiency, we've got good fight IQ and amazing composure. So I'm not sure if you guys remember this fight, but this was the rematch with Demetrius Johnson after his first loss since when he was in the UFC. He lost to this guy called Marlon Moraes. No, it's not Marlon Moraes, is it? Something Moraes. Forgot his first name. But then he got knocked out by a knee. And then Demetrius Johnson, skillfully, if you watch the sequence of this, I'll get my editor to put a clip on now.
Oh, big right, DJ, he's standing, big knee!
The way he did this was just absolutely beautiful. And this is the perfect example of a fighter with perfect timing and distance, perfect efficiency with movements and feints and stuff like that, perfect fight IQ, and amazing composure, especially on this finish, which I'm talking about right now. When skill beats size then, this is when the lower weight class skill advantage comes in, because think about the history of the UFC. How often do we see it that the smaller guy, the featherweight moving up to lightweight, Conor McGregor, the light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight, Daniel Cormier? There's been a few occasions where, also Henry Cejudo moving up from flyweight to bantamweight, where we've seen the lighter person win against a bigger person in the double champ fight, right? And we've also seen it the opposite extent, where we've seen people like Adesanya try and move up and it hasn't worked out for him too well. But most of the time, when the lighter person moves up to the heavier weight class, they've actually won. There's a famous expression, I think Chael Sonnen said it once, and it's, you've got to be mostly scared of the number one guy in the weight class below you. They're a little bit faster than you, they've got a little bit more skill than you, and they're just a bit more of a better technical fighter than you are. Because like I said to you earlier, the higher the weight class you are, the less skill you have. The lower the weight class you are that you compete in, the more skill they tend to have. The times when the skill beats size is usually when the smaller fighter controls the range or pace very well, and they have superior cardio, superior tactics, and a better mindset for when they're going into the fight. And I can think of plenty of examples like Daniel Cormier in heavyweight. He was one of the smaller guys in the heavyweight division. He was fighting absolute monsters like Josh Barnett. He fought loads of big monsters in the heavyweight division. And then you've got people like Colby Covington, who could have probably cut down to lightweight if he really wanted to, but He walked into the cage at about 175 to 180 pounds, and he fought at welterweight, which is only 170 pounds. However, the people he was fighting, the people like Shavkat Rakhmonov, people like Hamzat Chimaev, loads of that, I think his name is Dong Hyun Kim, his name is. If you look at the size discrepancy, there's such massive size discrepancies. However, Colby's got such a skill advantage over all of these fighters. He was able to get the result even though he was way smaller than these people. So skill has beaten size many, many times in MMA. And the classic example is what I said at the beginning, where we've got Royce Gracie, who was about 175 pounds, and he won the whole tournament at 175 pounds. And he was fighting people well over 200 pounds, not just a little bit over 200 pounds, like 230, 240 pounds. When size beats skill, this is usually when they have equal skill levels, and then the size advantage then comes in. A perfect example I can think of is Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. They're both just as skilled as each other. However, Usman has just a little bit more power in his punches. He's probably got equal amount of cardio, but he's just bigger. He's just a bigger person. So Colby, unfortunately, needed the size in that fight. I truly believe that they're so equally matched when they first had their first fight. It was so close. It was so razor close. But when Kamaru was landing his shots on Colby, Colby was reacting a lot more compared to when Colby was hitting Usman with the same sort of shots, right? And then I can also think of Daniel Cormier versus John Jones, like I said earlier, and even Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz, because they're both very skilled fighters. Jan Blachowicz is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated fighters we've ever seen, really. His fight style is very ugly. He's got an ugly leg kick, he's got an ugly jab, but it's so fucking effective. He's probably got the best leg kick defense I've ever seen in MMA. Adesanya's whole game is based around landing the jab and landing the calf kick, but Jan Blachowicz completely neutralized all of that. And every single time that they got inside a clinch exchange or a grappling exchange, Adesanya just looked like the little baby in the cage. Jan Blachowicz could basically do what the fuck he wanted to him. So there's a few examples I can think of where size beats skill, and usually that's because the skill is all matched and even. Usually that's when it comes into it. There's been loads of times when the double champs haven't worked out. For example, I can think of when Volkanovski tried to move up to the lightweight division to fight Islam Makhachev, when Adesanya tried to move up to the Jan Blachowicz fight and win the light heavyweight belt. There's been a few times where the lighter person has tried his absolute hardest to move up to the weight class, but those two occasions that I can think of, Volkanovski's a very small lightweight. He's even technically kind of a small featherweight, really. He's not the biggest person. He's got a long reach advantage for how tall he is. However, he's not massive, especially in the lightweight division. However, Islam Makhachev, he's fighting in welterweight soon, right? So he's got a massive size advantage over Volkanovski, and it was pretty evident when they were in the cage together. Adesanya's kind of the opposite extent. He's just as tall as Jan Blachowicz, but the muscle mass and all of his physical attributes aren't as big as Jan Blachowicz, and that's why when we saw them in the clinch together, whenever Jan shot his double leg, Adesanya was just getting thrown around like a little baby and he couldn't really sprawl on him. So there has been a few times where the double champ hasn't worked out. However, in history, if you look at all of the MMA history, we've seen most of the time when the person moves up from the lighter weight class into the heavier weight class, they've won. I can also think of Amanda Nunes when she beat Chris Cyborg as well. There's been loads of different occasions where it has worked out for the lighter person. The moral of the story then, boys, skill beats size until size has skill. I thought that was a nice way of writing this down. This is so true, because I train loads of clients. I've got over 20 different one-to-one clients for my fighting, and I've got loads of different students that come to my MMA class because I'm an MMA coach, right? So when they first join, even though most people are bigger than me, I'm not the biggest person in the world. When they first join, my skill outclasses them for a certain amount of time. Once they've been training for a certain amount of time with me, and for one, it could be because they've figured out my fight style, maybe, but a lot of it is to do with the fact that the skill has been closed a little bit. They started off with skillful, I'm up here, and then after loads of training, they start to meet me here. Then once they've met me, then it comes down to who's bigger, and then it comes down to who's got more power in their punches, who can take a punch better, who's got more strength in a clinch. It's not one versus the other. It's not size versus skill. It's both, basically. Most dangerous fighters master both attributes. So if you want to learn how to do that, like I said at the beginning of the video, join my program Size and Violence, where I show you how to balance bodybuilding and fighting so that you look big and intimidating, but then at the same time you've got all of the ability to fight, and you also have training like an athlete, because we can't just train like a bodybuilder. We've got to train like an athlete for your sport, while simultaneously balancing the martial arts skill set too. So if you want any help on that, join my program Size and Violence. It's the first link in the description. Last week I got 3 people to join, so I want to see at least 5-10 people join this week. So thank you very much for watching, boys, and I shall see you on the next video.